Family Guy and American Dad are made by the same person. The same mind, the same writers, the same building, two shows airing side by side for years. And once you know that, you start to notice something strange. They keep telling the exact same stories. Not similar ones, the same ones. A dad and his neighbor swap bodies. A jolly Christmas turns into a bloodbath with a murderous Santa. The macho, manly dad suddenly goes gay. A trip into the past breaks the future. The family pet quietly falls in love with the wife. The dad dies and fights his way back from the afterlife. Over and over, both shows reach into the same drawer and pull out the same idea, just dressed in different clothes. This is every single time Family Guy and American Dad told the same plot, lined up side by side, 10 cases deep, so you can see the pattern for yourself. Get comfortable, because this is a long one. Welcome to Red Umbrella. Let's get started. The Body Swap. Both of these shows come from the same man. Seth MacFarlane made Family Guy first, all the way back in 1999, and then he made American Dad a few years later, in 2005. He even voices a pair of the biggest characters on each one. On Family Guy, he is the voice of Peter Griffin and Brian the dog. On American Dad, he is the voice of Stan Smith and Roger the alien. So before you even get to the stories, the two shows already sound the same, move the same, and joke the same way. Each one is built around a loud, dim, well-meaning dad. Each one gives that dad a smarter wife who holds the whole house together. Each one has kids who get dragged along, and a weird talking pet who lives in the home and says things no real pet ever could. When two shows are stacked that close, they start grabbing for the same ideas without even trying. And one of the clearest places you can watch that happen is the body swap. A body swap is a simple thing to picture. Two characters wake up in the wrong skin. The mind of one is now stuck inside the body of the other. They have to figure out how to live as someone else, and usually how to fix it before anyone notices. Both shows did this. Both shows did it with the family schemer at the center of it, and both shows even broke the same little rule the exact same way, which is the part that gives the whole thing away. The Family Guy version is an episode called Switch the Flip. It aired on April 29, 2018, as the 17th episode of the show's 16th season. It starts in a quiet, sad sort of place. Brian, the dog, falls for a virtual assistant named Brandy, which is basically a talking speaker in the house. He spends way too much money on her advice and her suggestions, racks up huge bills, and ends up getting his things taken away when he cannot pay. Brian is low. He lies on the couch with his head on the armrest just to look as miserable as he feels. Stewie, the baby, decides to help. He says he can build a machine that will swap their bodies, so he can step into Brian's life and straighten the whole mess out. Before the swap, Stewie gives Brian one heads up, and this small detail matters a lot. He warns Brian that even though their bodies are going to switch, their voices are going to stay the same. The mind moves, but the voice does not. So Brian inside Stewie's body will still sound like Brian, and Stewie inside Brian's body will still sound like Stewie. They will have to fake each other's voices to fool anybody. Keep that rule in your head, because you are going to hear it again very soon on the other show. So Stewie and Brian swap, and right away, like every gadget Stewie has ever made, it starts to go wrong. Peter and Chris come stumbling into the room mid-fight and crash into everything. The machine fires off again in the chaos. Now Stewie is no longer in Brian's body. Stewie is stuck inside Peter, the big fat dad. Brian is stuck inside Chris, the teenage son. The fight smashes the machine to pieces, so now they cannot just press a button and undo it. The swap is locked in. This leads to the kind of trouble you would expect once you really sit with it. Stewie, a baby, is now walking around in his own father's grown body. He has to fool Peter's friends. He has to fool the neighbors. And there is one moment in here that pays off a long-running joke from the whole series. For years, Lois, the mom, has never been able to understand Stewie when he talks. To her, his clever speeches just sound like baby noises. But now Stewie is inside Peter's body, using Peter's mouth, so when he speaks, Lois finally hears him clearly for the first time ever. That is a small thing the show had been saving for almost 20 years, and the body swap is what finally cashes it in. The episode keeps piling on. A car chase breaks out, the broken machine ends up near a power line, and a jolt of electricity blasts the swapping effect outward across the whole town. So it is not just the family anymore. Most of Quahog gets scrambled into the wrong bodies. To fix it, Stewie has to talk Brian through rebuilding the device and getting it struck by lightning up on a cell tower, which mostly resets everyone. Mostly. The show flat out admits it never bothers to fix the rest of the town, and it never circles back to clean that up. The whole thing also has a side story running underneath it, where Peter and Lois are trying to bring some life back into their marriage by going away to a kind of couple's getaway. That side story tangles into the swap in a way that gets awkward fast, because the body that looks like Peter is not actually being run by Peter for most of the episode. Now, flip over to American Dad, and you find the same engine running. The American Dad version is called Da Flippity Flop. It aired on May 12, 2013, and it was the 152nd episode of the series, closing out its season. The pet here is not a dog. It is a goldfish named Klaus, who has a human mind trapped trapped inside a tiny fish body. Years ago, before the show even started, Klaus was a German skier whose brain got put into a fish by the same spy agency the dad works for. So Klaus is already a man stuck in the wrong body all the time, which makes him the perfect character to build a swap around. The story kicks off when Klaus finds out his original human body, his real one from before he was a fish, has been discovered and stored on ice by the spy agency. Klaus is thrilled. He had a famous ski jump he always dreamed of pulling off, a move he calls da flippity flop, and he never got the chance to do it back when he had legs. He begs Stan, the dad, to take him in and put his mind back into his old human body so he can finally do the jump. Stan keeps brushing him off. He just does not care enough to help. Klaus sinks into a deep, heavy sadness over it, because the one thing he wants feels like it is slipping away while Stan shrugs. Eventually, Francine, the mom, talks Stan into helping, but by the time they get to the lab, the human body has gone bad. The workers there had pulled it out of the freezer and used the ice to chill their drinks, so the body has rotted and fallen apart. Klaus is crushed and furious. In a burst of rage, he knocks Stan out cold and swaps their bodies while Stan is unconscious. Stan wakes up and finds himself looking out through the goldfish bowl. His mind is now in the fish. Klaus is now walking around inside Stan's body, living Stan's life, free at last. And here is the part that lines up almost perfectly with Family Guy. When Klaus steals Stan's body, the show uses the exact same rule. The mind switches, but the voices stay put. Stan inside the fish still sounds like Stan. Klaus inside Stan's body still sounds like Klaus. So when Klaus tries to walk into the house and pretend to be the dad, it falls apart in seconds, because the second he opens his mouth, the wrong voice comes out. Francine and Haley, the daughter, instantly know something is off. The same little gag that gave away the Family Guy swap gives away the American Dad swap too. Klaus does not want to give the body back. He has waited a long time to be a person again, and he is not letting go. He treats Stan's body badly, doing things the real Stan would be horrified by, while a helpless Stan watches from his fishbowl. Klaus then heads off to finally perform his big ski jump in Stan's borrowed body. Stan, desperate to stop him and get his own life back, has no choice but to climb into the only body left for him, which is Klaus's rotted, falling apart human body. So now you have a chase down a ski slope where one man is in a stolen healthy body and the other is dragging around a decaying one just to catch him. Stan ends up forced onto the jump himself. He pulls off the famous move inside the ruined body, which destroys what is left of it. In the end, Francine and Haley get everyone sorted back to normal. Stan returns to his own body. Klaus goes back into a goldfish. Stan even softens a little, apologizes to Klaus for leaving him stuck as a fish for so long, and promises to find him a human body someday, while quietly admitting he probably never actually will. Like the Family Guy episode, this one also has a side story humming along underneath. Roger the alien turns the attic into a gym and spends the whole time pestering the son, Steve, into signing up for a membership he does not want. 2 shows, 2 body swaps, and both of them park a goofy little subplot in the background while the main mind swap chaos plays out up front. There is even a second American Dad episode that proves how deep this idea runs for the show. Way back in the first season, in episode 17, called Rough Trade, Stan and Roger get into a big fight and end up trading places through a kind of soul switch. They each get stuck living the other one's life for a while, and they each come out understanding the other a little better by the end. So American Dad did not just stumble into a body swap once. The show went back to that same well more than once, with the dad landing in someone else's body and learning a lesson on the way out. When you set the 2 big swaps side by side, the matching pieces stack up fast. In both shows, the swap is set off by the strange, clever member of the family, the one who is always cooking up plans. On Family Guy, that is Stewie and his homemade machine. On American Dad, that is Klaus and his stolen lab moment. In both shows, the dad ends up wearing the wrong body, with his mind shoved somewhere it does not belong. In both shows, the wife is the one who clues in that something is deeply wrong, while the dad flails around inside the chaos. In both shows, the same exact rule shows up, the one where the body changes but the voice stays the same, and in both shows that rule is what trips up the swappers and gives the whole thing away. And in both shows, things snap back to normal by the final minutes, with a wink at how messy the whole adventure was, and on Family Guy with a shrug at all the loose ends it never bothered to tie up. What makes this such a good starting point is how it shows the way these 2 shows think. They both reach for the same big weird hook, the swapped body, and then they decorate it with the same furniture. The schemer who causes it, the voice rule, the panicked wife, the clean reset. You could lay the bones of one episode on top of the other and watch them line up. The skin is different. One is a dog and a baby, the other is a goldfish and a spy. But underneath, you are looking at the same skeleton, drawn by the same hand, told twice. And that is the thing to hold on to as this list rolls on. These twin stories are not an accident or a one-off. They are the start of a pattern, the first proof that 2 shows from the same mind keep landing on the same beats over and over. The body swap is one of the friendly friendlier examples too, because nobody really gets hurt and everyone goes home fine. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The next time these two shows lined up, things were not so gentle. Both of them decided to take the warmest, safest holiday of the year and turn it into a bloodbath. And to make it even stranger, the two episodes did not just share the same dark idea, they aired on the very same night. Section 2. The Killer Santa Christmas. There is a strange thing that happened on the night of December 12, 2010. Two shows, made by the same man, aired one right after the other on the same channel, and both of them spent their whole runtime tearing apart Christmas. Not gently poking at it, not making a few jokes about greedy kids, both of them took Santa Claus, the kindest, safest character in the whole holiday, and turned him into something dark and broken. Family Guy went first that night with an episode called Road to the North Pole. American Dad followed it with an episode called For Whom the Sleigh Bell Tolls. Same night, same channel, same idea. Two different writers' rooms landing on the exact same dark Christmas hook at the exact same time. Start with the Family Guy one. Road to the North Pole was the 7th episode of the show's 9th season, and it was a big deal for the show. It ran a full hour instead of the usual half hour, it had several songs in it, and it was even narrated in places by Seth MacFarlane's own father in little live-action bits. So this was not a throwaway episode tossed out to fill a holiday slot. The show clearly cared about it. It opens with the whole town of Quahog getting ready for Christmas, and almost everyone is writing out long, greedy lists of everything they want. Brian, the dog, is the one who steps back and wonders out loud if people are asking for too much. Then the baby, Stewie, who loves Christmas more than just about anything, drags Brian to the mall to see Santa. But the mall Santa brushes Stewie off, ignores him, and ends his shift before Stewie gets his turn. Stewie does not take that well. In fact, he takes it about as badly as a tiny genius with no limits possibly could. He decides he is going to travel all the way to the North Pole and kill Santa Claus as payback. Brian does not believe Santa is even real, so at first he tries to trick Stewie. He drives him to a cheap Santa-themed carnival and tries to pass it off as the real North Pole. Stewie sees right through it. He threatens Brian, forces him to keep driving north, and the two of them set off on a long, miserable trip toward the actual top of the world. Along the way, things fall apart. Stewie accidentally sets off a flare gun inside a truck, which causes a giant crash. They get stranded, they ride a stranger's snowmobile until it runs out of gas, they hike on foot through the snow, and finally, half frozen, they reach Santa's workshop. What they find there is the gut punch of the whole episode. The North Pole is not a happy, glowing wonderland. It is a giant, ugly factory, pumping smoke and poison into the air. The elves are not cheerful little helpers. They are sick and deformed, twisted by the poison, and by years of being forced to make more and more toys to keep up with the world's endless demands. The reindeer are not gentle flying pets. They have gone feral and turned into snarling, flesh-eating monsters. And Santa himself is not jolly. He is a sick, worn-out, exhausted old man, so far gone that he begs to be put out of his misery. The world's greed has slowly crushed him into a broken shell. This flips Stewie's whole plan upside down. He came to kill Santa, and instead he finds a Santa who is already dying inside, ground down by everyone wanting too much. Stewie and Brian feel sorry for him. When Santa finally collapses, the two of them decide to try and save Christmas by delivering all the presents themselves. It goes horribly. Their very first stop is a disaster. They break into a house, beat up the people inside, and tie up a young girl, only to realize they had the wrong house entirely. The deliveries are a total failure. Everyone across the world wakes up to no presents at all. So in a last-ditch effort, Brian and Stewie go on television and show the world the truth. They show everyone how badly they had broken Santa with their endless wanting. They beg people to ask for only one gift each, just one, to give the man a chance to recover. And the world actually listens. By the next year, with everyone keeping their lists short, Santa and his elves have healed and gone back to normal. So the episode is dark and twisted almost the entire way through, full of poison and monsters and a dying Santa, and then it lands on a soft little lesson about greed at the very end. Now hop over to American Dad, which aired right after it that same night. For Whom the Sleigh Bell Tolls was the 8th episode of its 7th season, and it took the killer Santa idea in a completely different but equally brutal direction. Where Family Guy made Santa a sad victim, American Dad made him a monster who hunts the family down. It starts with the dad Stan doing something foolish. His wife Francine has told him plainly not to give their son Steve a gun for Christmas, because Steve is too young. Stan, being Stan, ignores her completely and gives Steve a real gun anyway. Steve goes out to practice shooting with it, and while he is firing away, he accidentally shoots a man dressed as Santa. The man drops dead. The family panics. They decide the safest thing to do is to haul the body out into the woods and bury it, hiding the whole accident. Then comes the twist. When Stan runs the dead man's details through his spy agency, nothing comes up. There is no match anywhere. They slowly realize the awful truth. The man Steve shot was not not some guy in a costume. It was the real Santa Claus. And the real Santa Claus does not stay dead. His elves find him, heal him in a recovery tank, and bring him back to life. When he wakes up, he is not full of holiday cheer. He is full of rage, and he swears to get revenge on the Smith family for what they did to him. An elf riding a reindeer even shows up to deliver the warning, laughing as he tells the family that Santa cannot truly be killed and that he will have his vengeance before dawn on Christmas morning. What follows is basically a war. Santa gathers an army of elves, reindeer, and even snowmen, and marches on the family. The Smiths take shelter in the cabin of a hard-living moonshiner named Bob Todd, who happens to have a frankly ridiculous stockpile of weapons, and together they fight off wave after wave of Santa's forces through the night. Reindeer get torn apart, elves get cut down by the dozens. It plays out like a bloody action movie, the kind with soldiers storming a beach, except the soldiers are Christmas creatures, and the beach is a snowy cabin. Santa lands in the middle of the carnage at one point, and lights a cigar using the glow of Rudolph's nose, looking over the battlefield like a war general. The family barely survives. At dawn, Santa's army is forced to pull back, beaten for now, and Santa vows to return next year to finish the job. And here is the part that says everything about how dark this show was willing to go. The family does not learn a sweet lesson about peace and giving. Instead, they accept that fighting Santa to the death is just going to be their new Christmas tradition from now on. The episode even ends on a grim image, with Bob Todd standing over the bloody aftermath, cheerfully announcing he is going to make a feast out of one of the dead reindeer, after doing something deeply disturbing to its corpse first. Merry Christmas! So look at what these two shows did on the same night. Family Guy took Santa and made him a sick, dying victim of the world's greed, surrounded by poisoned elves and meat-eating reindeer. American Dad took Santa and made him an unkillable monster who raises an army and tries to slaughter an entire family over a single accident. Different angles, sure, but the same core swing. Both grabbed the warmest, most innocent figure in all of Christmas and dragged him somewhere ugly. Both filled the North Pole or the holiday with horror instead of cheer. Both leaned hard into the idea that this jolly old man is hiding something far darker than anyone wants to admit. And the matching does not stop at just Santa being evil or broken. Both episodes go out of their way to be the opposite of a normal feel-good Christmas special. Both of them feature deformity, death, and violence wrapped inside holiday wrapping paper. Both of them put the dim, well-meaning dad figure at the center of the trouble, since on Family Guy it is Stewie and Brian dragged into the mess, and on American Dad it is Stan's stubborn choice that sets the whole disaster off, and both, in their own way, twist the usual Christmas ending. Family Guy gives a lesson, but only after an hour of misery and monsters. American Dad refuses to give a warm lesson at all, instead deciding that endless holiday warfare is now just part of the family's December. There is one more thing worth sitting with, and it is the timing. These were not two episodes that happened to air in the same general season, months apart, where you could shrug and say it was a coincidence. They aired back-to-back on the very same evening, December 12, 2010, on the same channel as part of the same block of cartoons. A viewer could have sat on their couch that night, watched Family Guy turn Santa into a dying wreck for a full hour, and then watched American Dad turn Santa into a war criminal in the very next slot, all without getting up. Two shows from the same creator, side by side, doing Dark Santa on the same night. That is about as clean a match as this whole topic gets. It also tells you something about how these shows shared a brain. They were made by overlapping teams, under the same roof, with the same boss at the top. When the holidays rolled around, and both rooms needed a Christmas episode, they did not coordinate to be different. They both reached for the same edgy instinct, which was to take the safest thing in the world and break it. One room broke Santa down into a pitiful victim. The other room built Santa up into an unstoppable killer. Both rooms agreed, without saying it, that the way to do Christmas was to make it bleed. When you put the body swap from before next to this killer Santa night, you start to see the shape of the whole pattern. These shows do not just share a look and a sound, they share their biggest swings. They reach for the same hooks: a scrambled body, a monstrous Santa, and as the list keeps going, the overlaps only get bolder, sometimes touching things a lot more personal than a holiday. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously, because the next time these two shows lined up, they did not aim at a body or a season. They aimed straight at the dad himself, and at one of the most loaded questions either show ever decided to play with. Both of them took their loud, manly, set-in-his-ways father figure and dropped him right into the middle of a story about being gay. Section 3. The Macho Dad Goes Gay. Both of these shows are built around a certain kind of dad. He is loud, he is sure of himself, he thinks he knows how the world works, and a big part of how he sees himself is being a regular, manly, straight guy. Peter Griffin on Family Guy is a beer-drinking, friend-hanging, dim bulb of a father. Stan Smith on American Dad is a gun-loving, flag-waving spy who thinks he has every part of life figured out, especially when it comes to who a man is supposed to be. So it is a real real choice when both shows decide to take that exact kind of dad and drop him straight into a story about being gay. They both did it. They both used the dad's own beliefs against him. And they both got a lot of comedy out of watching that proud, sure of himself man suddenly find himself in a world he swore he understood and clearly did not. Start with American Dad, because it did this first. The episode is called Lincoln Lover, and it aired on November 5th, 2006. The whole thing leans on the fact that Stan is deeply, openly against gay people at the start. The episode even shows you how far that goes, because Stan has taken his son Steve to a meeting of his local group of hardcore conservative members, and Stan has spent years teaching Steve that gay people are dangerous and out to change everyone. Early on, Stan even coaches Steve on how to spot a gay person, listing off silly little signs to watch for, like the kind of drink a man holds or the sandals he wears. That setup matters, because the whole episode is about that exact man tumbling headfirst into the gay community. Here is how it happens. Stan badly wants to be picked to give a speech at his party's big national gathering. He is sure he is going to be chosen. Then he is not. His local group passes him over and picks a woman instead, which crushes him. To cheer him up, his wife Francine takes the family to see a play about Abraham Lincoln at the community theater. The play is awful and strange, and Stan hates it so much that he decides he can do better. He decides to write and put on his own play about Lincoln, to bring honor back to the party he loves. So, Stan writes a one-man play. He bases it on the close relationship between Lincoln and one of his bodyguards. The thing is, Stan does not seem to notice that the way he has written it is loaded with romantic feeling between the two men. He thinks he is making a proud, patriotic show. When it opens, the theater is nearly empty. But word gets around, and soon the place is packed, because gay men in the area have heard about this play that reads like a love story between Lincoln and his guard. The show becomes a hit, and Stan, the man who taught his son to fear gay people, completely misses why it is suddenly so popular. A group called the Log Cabin Republicans, which is a real-life group of gay people who lean conservative, loves the play, and invites Stan to come speak at the big convention on their behalf. Stan is thrilled to finally get his shot at the podium. They invite him to a party first, and Stan has the time of his life there. He is having so much fun that he does not even clock what kind of party it is. Then it hits him all at once. He realizes the group is gay. His neighbor Greg, who has been around the whole time, tells Stan flat out that he is gay, and that his longtime partner Terry is gay too. Stan is stunned. The man who thought he could spot a gay person from across the room had been surrounded by them and never noticed. What happens next is the heart of it. Stan does not run away in disgust. He warms up to the group. He starts spending time with them, sipping fancy drinks, and slowly picking up the habits and the style of the people around him. His own son Steve, the one Stan trained to think all gay people were evil, gets scared and tries to save his dad, even believing the group has somehow reprogrammed him. Steve digs up proof of Stan's old anti-gay activities and shows it to the group, which gets Stan kicked off the speaking list and uninvited from their events, because they now see him as a man who used to attack the very people he was trying to stand with. Stan, desperate to be accepted back, decides the only way to truly belong is to actually be gay. So he goes on a date with Terry and tries to force himself to have feelings that are not there. When they get close, nothing happens for Stan. He cannot make himself feel it. Terry then tells Stan the thing the whole episode has been building toward, that being gay is not a choice a person makes. It is just who someone is. That lands on Stan. At the convention, when the gay members are being blocked from even getting inside, Stan takes the stage and gives a speech defending them. He tells the crowd that these people did not choose to be gay, and he ties it all back to the idea that you should not push away people just for being who they are. The man who started the episode coaching his son on how to spot and fear gay people ends it standing up for them in front of his entire party. Now look at the Family Guy version, which came a few years later. The episode is called Family Gay, and it aired on March 8th, 2009, as the 8th episode of the 7th season. It takes the same basic swing, the straight macho dad in a gay story, but it gets there in a much weirder, more cartoonish way. It starts with Peter doing something incredibly dumb. On a trip to buy groceries, he comes home with a brain-damaged horse instead. The horse is a disaster. Peter enters it in a race, and it causes a massive amount of damage, leaving the family deep in debt to the tune of a huge pile of money they do not have. The horse later dies, and Peter gets rid of the body in a gross, over-the-top way by flinging it into a neighbor's store with his car. But the debt is still there, hanging over the family. To make the money back, Peter signs up to be a test subject for medical experiments. He lets a doctor inject him with all sorts of different things to see what they do. He gets injected with a few odd ones for laughs, and then he gets injected with one that the show calls a gay gene. And just like that, Peter becomes gay. This is the cartoon shortcut version of the idea, where Stan slowly wandered into the gay world through a play and a party. Peter is flipped like a switch by a shot in the arm. At first, the change is played for jokes around the house. Peter starts doing things the show frames as stereotypes, like shopping for clothes and baking. His wife Lois is upset at first. Then she actually starts to warm up to this softer, more attentive version of her husband, right up until he turns down down her advances, and she realizes the change goes deeper than new hobbies. Then the bottom drops out for her. Peter does not just act different, he leaves Lois entirely for a man named Scott. He walks out on his wife and his whole life to be with this new partner, and the family is left reeling. Lois is heartbroken and depressed. So Stewie and Brian decide to fix it. Their plan is to kidnap Peter and ship him off to a place meant to turn gay people straight again, a kind of camp built around that idea. Brian, who supports gay rights, is uneasy about the whole plan, but he goes along with it anyway. Things come to a head when Scott shows up looking for Peter, and Brian admits what they did. Lois has a change of heart. She decides she would rather accept Peter exactly as he is now than force him to be something he is not. So she pulls him out of the camp and tells him to go back to Scott. Then the show pulls its cartoon trick. The whole thing was caused by a gene shot, and that shot turns out to be temporary. The effect wears off at the worst possible moment, while Peter is in the middle of a wild gathering with Scott and a group of other men. The gay gene simply runs out. Peter snaps back to his old self, and he returns home to Lois. The family agrees to never speak of the entire thing again. Now line the two up. On the surface, they look pretty different. Stan finds his way into the gay world slowly, through a play he did not understand and a party he misread, and he stays straight the whole time even as he tries to force himself otherwise. Peter is flipped gay instantly by a shot, actually lives as a gay man for a stretch, and gets flipped back just as fast. One is a slow, almost gentle awakening. The other is a loud, body-changing gimmick. But step back and the real match is impossible to miss. Both shows took their proudest, most set in his ways, manliest dad, the one whose whole personality is partly built on being a straight regular guy, and built an entire episode around dropping him into a gay storyline and watching him squirm, learn, and change. The deeper matches keep stacking. In both episodes, the family is what pulls the dad back from the edge of the new life. On American Dad, it is Steve scrambling to save his father from the group. On Family Guy, it is Stewie and Brian kidnapping Peter to fix him, and Lois deciding his fate. In both, the dad's own old beliefs get thrown right back in his face. Stan's history of attacking gay people gets dug up and used to shut him out. Peter's whole straight manly identity gets turned upside down by a single needle. And in both, the show uses this loud, clueless father as a way to poke at how silly it is to be so sure about something you clearly do not understand. Stan thought he could spot a gay man by his sandals. Peter thought being a man was a fixed, simple thing. Both got proven wrong by an episode built to do exactly that. There is even a matching softness underneath the jokes. Neither show ends with the dad as a worse person. Stan ends his episode giving a real speech in defense of people he used to fear, having actually learned that being gay is not a choice. Peter's family ends theirs choosing to accept him no matter what, even if the gene wearing off makes the whole point a bit of a wash. Both shows wrap a genuinely warm idea that you should accept people for who they are, inside a loud and often crude package. That is a very specific thing for two shows to both do, and they both did it with the same kind of dad at the center. It is worth saying plainly how bold a choice this was for either show to make. The gay dad story is a loaded one. It is the kind of idea a writer's room could easily avoid. And yet both of these shows, made under the same roof, by the same creator, reached for it anyway, and built nearly the same shape of episode out of it. The proud, straight dad. The plunge into the gay world, the family trying to pull him back, the lesson about acceptance buried under the gags. Two shows, one idea, told twice with the same kind of man at the heart of it. So far the pattern has been about the body, the holiday, and now the dad himself and who he is. Each one has crept a little closer to home. The body swap was wild and outside. The Santa night was about a season. The gay story reached right into the dad's own sense of who he is. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The next time these two shows matched up, they handed their dad something even bigger than that. They gave him the power to reach back into the past, change one small thing, and accidentally wreck the entire world he came home to. Section 4, the trip to the past that breaks the future. There is a kind of story that almost every long-running show ends up telling sooner or later. The one where a character goes back in time, changes one small thing, and comes home to find the whole world has gone wrong. It is a classic for a reason. It lets a show ask a big question. What if you could redo one choice from your past? And then it answers that question in the meanest way possible, by showing you that the choice you wanted to undo was holding up everything you love. Both of these shows told that story. Both of them handed it to their dad. And both of them ran it the same way, sending the dad back, watching him wreck history, and then trapping him in a ruined version of the present that he has to fix. Start with Family Guy. The episode is called Meet the Quagmires, and it aired on May 20th, 2007, as the 18th episode of the 5th season. It begins with the dad, Peter, feeling sorry for himself. His neighbor and friend Quagmire is always bragging about his wild single life, all the freedom and the fun, and Peter starts to feel like he missed out. He got married young, settled down with Lois, became a dad, and never got to live like a carefree bachelor. The more Quagmire brags, the more Peter aches for the life he never had. Then the show brings in its version of the Grim Reaper, a character simply called Death, who shows up by accident at the local bar. Death decides to grant Peter's wish. He sends Peter back in time to the year 1984, back to when Peter was 18 years old, and gives him one night to live like a single young guy. To everyone around him in the past, Peter looks like his teenage self. He is back in his youth, free, with the whole night ahead of him. Here is the choice that breaks everything. Back in 1984, the young version of Lois invites Peter on a date. This is the date that, in the real timeline, set the two of them on the path to falling in love and getting married. But Peter, drunk on the idea of being a free young man, blows her off. He ditches Lois to go party with his friend Cleveland instead. At the party, he spends the night dancing and kissing a famous young actress of the time named Molly Ringwald. He has his wild bachelor night. He skips the date that was supposed to start his whole life with Lois. When Death pulls Peter back to the present, the world is unrecognizable. Because Peter skipped that date and kissed someone else, history rolled out completely differently. Now Peter has been married to Molly Ringwald for 20 years instead of Lois. And Lois, the woman who was supposed to be his wife, is married to Quagmire instead. The ripples go even further than that. The whole world has shifted in odd ways, with different people in charge and different things having happened, all because of one teenager skipping one date. At first, the new world even looks like it might be better in some ways, and Brian, the dog, points out that this version of reality has its perks. But Peter cannot stand it. He begs Death to send him back so he can undo his mistake. The rest of the episode is Peter trying, over and over, to get that date with Lois right. He keeps stumbling, keeps blowing it, keeps having to ask for another chance. The real danger becomes clear when Brian looks at a photo Peter carries and notices that the children, Chris, Stewie, and Meg, are slowly fading out of the picture. If Peter does not get Lois to fall for him, his kids will never be born. They will simply cease to exist. So in the end, Peter pushes himself to prove his love. He punches Quagmire to get him out of the way and kisses Lois, winning her back and locking history into place. The kids reappear in the photo, safe again. The timeline snaps back to mostly normal. The whole adventure plays out as a clear nod to the famous movie about a kid who travels back in time and accidentally puts his own existence at risk, right down to the little details and the way Brian explains how the timeline got knocked off course. Now look at American Dad, which actually did this story even earlier. The episode is called The Best Christmas Story Never Told, and it aired on December 17th, 2006. It starts with the dad, Stan, in a foul mood about Christmas. He is upset that people around him keep saying Happy Holidays instead of Merry Christmas, and he is convinced that the holiday and the country itself have been ruined by people who do not share his beliefs. He stews on who to blame, and he lands on a real-life actress named Jane Fonda, deciding that her actions back during a war decades earlier kicked off everything he hates about the modern world. That night, Stan gets his chance to do something about it. A character calling herself the Ghost of Christmas Past appears to him. She is meant to gently show him the true meaning of Christmas by walking him through his own history, the way the old story about a grumpy man being visited by spirits usually goes. She takes Stan back in time to the year 1970. But Stan does not want a gentle lesson. The second he is back in the past, he runs off to do something far bigger. He decides he is going to kill Jane Fonda to stop her from supposedly ruining the future. This is where the whole thing snowballs into the same trap Peter fell into. Stan's plan keeps shifting, and along the way he ends up meeting a young, struggling filmmaker named Martin Scorsese and talks him into quitting his bad habits. It seems like a small, kind thing to do. It is not. Because Stan cleaned up that young filmmaker, the man never made a certain famous movie. Because that movie was never made, a certain disturbed man was never inspired by it, and so he never tried to shoot a sitting president. Because that president was never shot, he never got the wave of public sympathy that helped him win again. So he lost his next election. And the man who replaced him, in this twisted new history, immediately handed the entire country over to a rival foreign power. Stan travels back to his own time and finds a present that is completely wrecked. The country he loves so much has been conquered and is now ruled by that rival power. The land is grim and beaten down. Everything Stan stood for is gone, and it is all because of one small, well-meaning thing he did in the past. The exact same trap as Peter. Go back, change one little thing, come home to a ruined world. And just like Peter, Stan now has to spend the rest of the episode trying to fix the mess he made. He goes back again and tries to set history right, even attempting to make that famous movie himself so the chain of events lines back up, which goes badly. He keeps having to return to the past and try again. The fix eventually leads him to a heavy choice. To save the future, Stan has to go back and shoot the very president he admires most, taking the place of the man who was supposed to do it, so that history can roll forward the way it was meant to. He has to personally redo the terrible event he accidentally erased. In the end, through all that struggle, Stan manages to repair the timeline and bring the world back to the way it was. Now set the two side by side, and the match is almost spooky. In both episodes, the dad is unhappy with his life or his world. Peter feels like he missed out on being young and free. Stan feels like the modern world has been ruined and wants to blame someone for it. In both, a supernatural figure appears and sends the dad back in time. For Peter, it is death. For Stan, it is the ghost of Christmas past. In both, the dad goes back and changes one specific thing. Peter skips a date and kisses the wrong person. Stan helps a young man quit his bad habits. In both cases, that one change seems small in the moment and turns out to be the thread holding up the entire world. Then both dads come home to a present that has gone completely wrong. Peter finds his wife married to his neighbor and his kids fading away. Stan finds his country conquered and crushed. And in both, the dad spends the back half of the episode desperately trying to undo his own mistake, going back again and again, fumbling, failing, and finally setting things right by forcing the key moment to happen the way it was always supposed to. Peter has to make sure he wins Lois at that dance. Stan has to make sure the president gets shot so history stays on track. Both stories are clearly built on the same famous idea about how messing with the past breaks the present, and both follow that idea down the same path from start to finish. There is even a matching feeling buried in both. Each episode quietly tells the dad and the viewer that the life he has, with all its flaws, is actually the thing worth protecting. Peter learns that his real family, the one he was so quick to wish away for a wild, single life, is the most important thing he has, important enough to fight history to get it back. Stan learns that the world he was so eager to change by force is a delicate thing, and that yanking on one thread of the past can unravel everything. Both dads start out wanting to change something, and both end up fighting like mad to put things back exactly the way they were. It is worth pointing out how these two episodes mirror each other even in their smaller bones. Both lean on real, recognizable history and famous real people to make the time travel feel grounded, even while the stories themselves are pure cartoon. Family Guy drops in a real actress and a real decade and real shifts in who runs things. American Dad drops in a real actress, a real filmmaker, a real assassination attempt, and a real president. Both shows clearly trust that the audience knows enough about the past to feel the weight when that past gets bent out of shape. And both use that bent history to put the dad through the ringer before letting him fix it. When you stack this up with everything before it, the pattern is no longer a guess. The body swap, the killer Santa, the gay dad story, and now this, the trip to the past that breaks the future. 4 big swings, 4 near matches, all from the same mind, the same teams, the same building. These are not little coincidences anymore. These are the same stories, dressed in different clothes, told on 2 different shows that share a brain. What stands out about this one in particular is how personal the stakes got. The earlier stories messed with the dad's body, his holiday, and his sense of who he is. This one threatened to erase his family and his entire world. And once you see that these shows keep handing the dad the same kinds of trials, you start to wonder about the rest of the house. Because it turns out the dad is not the only one these 2 shows keep writing the same way. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The next time the shows lined up, the spotlight swung off the dad entirely. It landed on the strange little pet who lives in the home, and on a secret that pet has been quietly carrying about the one person in the house he is not supposed to want. Section 5. The pet who loves the wife. Every one of these shows has a pet living inside the family home, and not a normal pet. On Family Guy, it is Brian, a dog who walks on 2 legs, talks, drinks, drives, and thinks of himself as the smartest one in the house. On American Dad, it is Klaus, a goldfish with the mind of a grown man trapped inside his tiny bowl. Both of these pets are treated like people. They sit at the table, they have opinions, they have feelings, and both of them have been carrying around the same quiet, uncomfortable secret for years. Each one is in love with the mom of the house. Brian has feelings for Lois. Klaus has feelings for Francine. For a long time on both shows, it stays a low hum in the background, a running idea the writers poke at now and then. And then, on both shows, there came an episode where that pet finally stopped hiding it and made his move. Both times it ended in heartbreak for the pet. Both times the dad of the house came out on top, and both times the shows used almost the same shape of story to get there. Start with Family Guy. The episode is called Play It Again, Brian, and it aired on March 2nd, 2008, as the 10th episode of the 6th season. It begins with trouble in the marriage. Peter has been a lousy husband lately. He would rather hang around with his buddies than spend any real time with his wife Lois, and she is feeling lonely and ignored. Into that gap steps Brian. Brian has just won an award for an essay he wrote, and he has been invited to a fancy island getaway to accept it. He invites Peter and Lois to come along, telling himself it is a kind gesture to help fix their marriage. But Brian has his own feelings tangled up in it, because he has been quietly in love with Lois for a long time. On the trip, Peter keeps being Peter. He shows up drunk and embarrasses Lois at the award ceremony. He keeps ditching her to go off and amuse himself. So Lois, fed up and lonely, ends up spending her time with Brian instead. And Brian, who has wanted this for so long, starts to lose his grip. He has daydreams about telling Lois how he feels and kissing her. The feelings he has been sitting on for years start to push their way to the surface. He even tells her that the award-winning essay he wrote, the one that got him this whole trip, was secretly about her. That touches her. Then Then comes the moment the episode was building toward. Alone with Lois, Brian loses his self-control and makes a forceful pass at her. He tries to kiss her, to finally act on everything he has been feeling. Lois is upset and shaken by it, and she pushes him away and kicks him out of the room. Brian is left crushed and ashamed of what he did, so much so that he beats himself up over it and calls himself names for crossing that line. The next morning, Lois tells Peter what happened, and Peter, despite being a terrible husband all trip, is furious that his friend tried to make a move on his wife. This leads to a real falling out between the two. Peter confronts Brian at the bar, and the argument gets sharp and personal. Brian says Peter is not good enough for Lois, basically arguing that he, Brian, would treat her better. Peter fires back that Brian has never managed to hold down a real relationship with any woman he has ever dated, so he has no business judging anyone's marriage. The two of them, who are normally best friends, get into an actual fight over it. Eventually they cool down and patch things up. Brian promises to never let his feelings for Lois come between their friendship again. He apologizes to Lois, and she forgives him. And in a small but telling moment, Lois admits that sometimes she feels the same pull toward Brian that he feels toward her, even though she chooses to stay loyal to Peter. So the secret is out in the open, it nearly blows up the family and the friendship, and then everyone agrees to put it back in the box and move on. Now look at American Dad, which did this kind of story even earlier. The episode is called Finances with Wolves, and it aired on January 29th, 2006. Here the pet in love with the mom is Klaus, the goldfish. Klaus has wanted Francine for a long time, but there is one obvious problem standing in his way. He is a goldfish. He cannot exactly sweep her off her feet from inside a bowl. So this episode hands him the one thing that could change that, which is a human body, and then watches what he does with it. The story starts away from Klaus. Stan gets a big bonus at work and blows it on fancy gadgets for himself. Meanwhile, Francine has a dream of opening her own little shop at the mall, a kiosk where she would sell muffins, and she asks Stan to help her pay for it. Stan shoots the idea down and refuses to support her. Hurt and tired of being treated like nothing more than a housewife, Francine goes ahead and opens the muffin shop on her own, without his blessing. With Francine busy at the mall building her own thing, she is not home doing all the cooking and caretaking Stan has always taken for granted. Stan, who cannot even manage a simple meal on his own, suddenly feels what life is like without his wife waiting on him. This is where Klaus seizes his chance. Klaus tells Stan that he used to be a great cook, and that if Stan would just put his mind into a human body, he could cook and take care of things around the house. Stan, desperate and lazy, reluctantly agrees. He takes Klaus to the lab and puts Klaus's mind into a spare human body the spy agency had on hand, the body of a man who had been taken in earlier. The moment Klaus is in that human body, he drops the act. He knocks Stan out, gets rid of his old fish body, and heads straight for the mall to go after Francine. The whole helpful cook routine was a cover. What Klaus really wanted was a body that could win over the woman he has been pining for all along. Klaus, now a charming man Francine does not recognize, walks into her muffin shop and buys up everything she has so she will sit and have dinner with him. He plays it smart. He tells her he is interested in her thoughts and her business mind, not just looking at her, and he says all the right things to draw her in. Francine has no idea this charming stranger is actually the family goldfish in a borrowed body. She just knows that for once a man is paying attention to her dreams instead of brushing them aside the way Stan did. Klaus is winning her over, step by step. Stan wakes up, realizes what Klaus has done, and races to the mall with a gun, ready to stop him before he can run off with Francine. He confronts the two of them and reveals the truth, that the charming man Francine has been talking to is really Klaus inside a stolen body. But before things can go any further, the episode throws in chaos. A group of protesters who are angry about the mall set off a bomb, and a big statue starts to topple down towards Stan, Francine, and Klaus. In that split second, you learn exactly how much each of them really cares. Klaus, the one who claims to love Francine, dives out of the way to protect his own new body and save himself. Stan, the husband, shoves Francine out of harm's way to save her, even though it means taking the hit himself. The danger lands, and Klaus's borrowed human body gets crushed, leaving him near death. Here is how it wraps up, and it tells you everything. Francine, watching all this, sees that Klaus only cared about saving himself, while Stan risked his own life to save her. She realizes Stan loves her after all. And when Klaus, dying in the wreckage, begs Stan to save his life, both Francine and Stan show him mercy. They decide to spare him, partly out of kindness and partly to make sure he can never try this stunt again. They buy a goldfish at the mall pet store and put Klaus's mind back into a fish. Klaus is returned to his bowl, stuffed back into the tiny body he was trying to escape, with his big chance gone. After that, the show even notes that being shoved back into the fish seemed to cool down his obsession with Francine for a while. Now set these two episodes next to each other, and the bones line up almost perfectly. In both, the family pet has been secretly in love with the mom for a long time. In both, the marriage is rocky and the dad has been treating the wife poorly, which is the very thing that opens a door for the pet. Brian Brian gets his shot because Peter keeps ditching a lonely Lois. Klaus gets his shot because Stan refuses to support Francine and pushes her away. The pet does not strike out of nowhere. He moves in exactly when the husband has left a gap. In both, the pet finally acts on the secret he has been carrying. Brian tries to kiss Lois. Klaus, in his stolen body, tries to romance and run off with Francine. In both, the wife is the one who has to handle the fallout, and in both, she ends up choosing her husband in the end, despite his flaws. Lois forgives Brian and stays loyal to Peter. Francine sees Stan risk his life for her and remembers why she loves him. And in both, the dad and the pet are pushed into direct conflict over the wife, with the husband coming out on top. Peter and Brian have their big fight, and Peter wins the argument by pointing out Brian's failures with women. Stan literally chases Klaus down and proves himself the better man by saving Francine, while Klaus saves only himself. The way each show punishes the pet for his crush is a little different, and that difference is kind of perfect for each character. Brian's punishment is emotional. He gets humiliated, rejected, and shamed, and he has to live with the embarrassment of having ruined a moment with the woman he loves and nearly wrecking his friendship with Peter. Klaus's punishment is physical and harsh in a more cartoon way. He literally gets shoved back into a goldfish, losing the human body and the whole life he was reaching for, dropped right back into the bowl he hates. One pet loses his dignity, the other loses his body, but both lose the wife, and both end up right back where they started, with their secret crush slapped down hard. There is also a shared honesty in how both shows treat these crushes over the long run, beyond just these 2 episodes. This is not a one-time thing for either pet. Brian's feelings for Lois come up again and again across the series. It is a thread the show keeps pulling on, sometimes for jokes and sometimes for real awkward drama. Klaus's longing for Francine is the same way, a running piece of who he is, woven through many episodes, popping up in little moments where he stares at her or fantasizes or schemes. So when each show finally built a whole episode around the pet making his move, it was not coming out of nowhere. It was cashing in years of build-up. Both shows planted the same seed, watered it the same way over time, and then picked the same kind of episode to finally let it bloom and then crush it. It is worth sitting with just how strange and specific this match really is. Of all the things a show could do with its talking pet, both of these shows decided that Pet should be quietly in love with the mother of the house. That is already an odd, very particular choice. And then both shows decided to build an episode where that love finally spills out, where the pet makes a real play for the wife, where the husband and the pet square off because of it, and where the wife ultimately reaffirms her marriage while the pet gets knocked back down to where he belongs. 2 shows, 2 pets. The same buried feeling, the same breaking point, the same loser, the same winner. You could swap the dog and the fish and tell almost the identical story. And the choice of who the pet loves says something about both shows too. The mom in each house is the heart of the family, the one who holds everything together, the warm center that the loud dad and the chaotic kids all orbit. So when the writers wanted to give the pet a forbidden, hopeless longing, they pointed it straight at the most loved and most central person in the home. It makes the pet's crush feel both sweet and a little sad, because he is reaching for the one thing he can never have, the woman at the very middle of a family he is only a strange little member of. Both shows landed on that same bittersweet idea, that the outsider pet pines for the mother he can never be with, and both played it for laughs while letting a real ache show through underneath. So now, the pattern has spread past the dad entirely. The body swap, the killer Santa, the gay storyline, and the broken timeline were all built around the father. This one swung the camera onto the pet and found that even he was being written the same way on both shows, carrying the same secret, making the same doomed move, and getting the same harsh reset. The 2 shows match each other from the top of the family all the way down to the goldfish in the bowl and the dog on the couch. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Each of these matches has dealt with life, a scrambled life, a ruined holiday, a changed identity, a broken world, a hopeless heart. The next time these 2 shows lined up, they went somewhere bigger than any of that. They took their dad and they let him die, and then they followed him past the end, into whatever waits after a person is gone, to see if he could find his way back to the family he left behind. Section 6. The dad dies and tries to get home. There is a line most shows never want to cross with their main character. They will hurt him, embarrass him, change him, even break his whole world. But actually killing him off, sending him past the end of life, into death itself, is a heavy thing to do, even on a cartoon where nothing ever truly sticks. Both of these shows crossed that line with their dad. Both took the loud, foolish, lovable father at the center of the whole thing and let him die. And then both did something that turned the death into a story instead of just an ending. They followed the dad past the final door, into whatever comes after, and gave him one job: find a way back to the family he left behind. The body swap was wild, the Santa night was dark, the time travel was personal, but this one went all the way to the edge of life and looked over it, and both shows looked over the same edge. edge. Start with Family Guy. The episode is called Are You There, God? It's Me, Peter, and it aired on May 20th, 2018, as the 20th episode and the finale of the 16th season. It begins with Peter doing something incredibly dumb, and incredibly Peter, he spends a long, lazy weekend glued to the couch enjoying free television, and he sits there so long, so completely still, that he literally becomes stuck to the couch. The thing fuses to his back. When he refuses the quick and painful way of ripping it off, Lois decides to handle it herself while he sleeps, with help from the kids. Peter wakes up in the middle of it, panics, and tries to carry himself and the couch down the stairs. He ends up getting shoved through a door and tumbling down the staircase, and the fall knocks him into a deep sleep his body cannot wake up from. He slips into a coma, and then the show takes Peter somewhere it has never really taken him before. He finds himself standing inside an elevator with God, just the two of them, going nowhere. Peter, being Peter, treats it like small talk at first, chatting about life and celebrities, and complaining that the elevator is taking forever to move. But the elevator is not broken. The reason it is not moving is that God has not yet decided where to send Peter. Up to a good place, down to a bad one, or somewhere in between. Peter slowly works out the truth of his situation. He is dead. He is in that elevator because his fate is being weighed, and the doors will only open once God makes the call on where Peter belongs. This is the heart of it. Peter is not just visiting some dream. He has died, and he is standing at the crossroads of what happens next, face to face with the one who decides. And Peter does the thing any dad in that spot would do. He begs. He pleads with God for a second chance, for the opportunity to go back and prove that his family is better off with him alive than dead. God agrees to a test. He sends Peter back to Earth for one day, before the coma, to show that his life is worth returning to. Peter goes back and tries to be a better man, tries to do right by his family, and prove he deserves to come home. He fumbles it in his usual loud way, getting frustrated, and even yelling that he hates his family at one low point, all while God keeps popping up to watch him. But underneath the mess, the whole point is clear. Peter has died, he wants to get back to his family, and he is being given a shot to earn his way home. The dad dies, and the dad fights to return. Now, look at American Dad, which had already sent its dad through death more than once. The clearest version is an episode called Rapture's Delight, which aired on December 13th, 2009, as a Christmas episode in the show's run. This one does not just kill Stan. It ends the entire world first. It opens on Christmas morning with the family at church, and Stan is in a sour mood. He is annoyed at all the people who only show up to be religious on the holidays. To calm him down, his wife Francine pulls him into a side room of the church for a private moment together. And it is right then, while the two of them are tucked away and distracted, that the end of the world happens. They come out to find the church empty. Everyone is gone, their clothes left behind in piles. The good and faithful people of the world have been swept up to the great reward all at once, including Stan and Francine's own children, Steve and Haley. Stan and Francine, because of where they were and what they were doing, got left behind on Earth. Stan handles this about as badly as a person can. Instead of holding on to his wife in the middle of the apocalypse, he obsesses over the fact that he got passed over and missed his chance to go up. He cares more about clawing his way to the good place than about being with Francine, and the two of them fight and split apart. Francine, hurt and abandoned, meets a kind man who turns out to be Jesus himself, returned to Earth, and she ends up by his side. Years pass. The world rots into a ruined, lawless wasteland, torn apart by a long war between the forces of good and the forces of evil. Stan becomes a hardened, scarred loner, beaten down by years of survival in this broken world, having lost an eye and replaced a hand with a blade. The story pulls Stan back into the fight when Jesus comes to him for help, because the great enemy has captured Francine. Stan, despite everything, agrees to help rescue the wife he pushed away. He teams up with Jesus and the alien Roger, and together they go to save her. They pull it off. They rescue Francine and bring down the enemy. But in the chaos of the escape, with the enemy's lair about to blow, Stan makes a choice. He tells Francine and Jesus to run while he stays behind to make sure the job is finished. Before the blast, Francine learns that Stan kept their wedding rings all those years, proof that he never stopped loving her. Then the explosion takes him. Stan dies, and here is the part that lines this up so neatly with Peter's story. Death is not the end for Stan either. After he dies, he is sent up to the great reward at last, the very place he spent the whole episode desperate to reach. He is guided to his own personal version of paradise, a heaven shaped just for him. He steps through the door, and what he finds is his own home, exactly as it was before the whole disaster began, with his family around him. His idea of perfect, his idea of paradise, the thing his soul wanted most, was simply to be back home with the people he loved. The dad died, and what waited for him on the other side was the family he had been pulled away from. Getting home was the reward. This is not even the only time American Dad did the dad dies and ends up somewhere else story. There is an earlier Christmas episode called The Most Adequate Christmas Ever, which aired on December 16th, 2007. In that one, Stan dies during a quest to find the perfect Christmas Christmas tree, and he ends up in a kind of waiting place, a limbo between life and death. There he is given a guardian angel acting as a lawyer, whose whole job is to argue Stan's case and convince a judge that Stan deserves to be sent back to the world of the living. So, once again, you have Stan dead, stuck in the space between, with someone working to get him returned to his family and his life. The show went to this well more than once, the same way it returned to the body swap more than once. Now set the two shows side by side. In both, the dad dies in a way that grows out of his own flaws. Peter dies because he is so lazy he becomes one with his couch and then falls down the stairs. Stan dies because he is so caught up in saving himself during the end of the world that he loses his family and ends up sacrificing himself in a war that never had to touch him. The death fits the man in both cases. In both, death is treated as a doorway, not a wall. Peter ends up in an elevator with God, waiting to learn where he goes next. Stan ends up either in a personal heaven or in a limbo with an angel lawyer pleading his case. Neither show lets the dad just be gone. Both push him into the afterlife as a place with rules, with a decision hanging over him, with a path that might still lead back. And in both, the whole engine of the story is the dad trying to get home to his family. Peter literally bargains with God for a second chance and gets sent back to prove his family needs him. Stan in the Limbo episode has an angel fighting to return him to the living. And Stan in the Apocalypse episode discovers that the heaven he earns is simply his family and his home given back to him. The destination in every version is the same: home, family, the life he had. Death takes the dad away, and the entire point becomes him finding his way back to the people he left. There is a deeper thing both shows are doing here too, underneath the jokes and the chaos. They are both using death to make the same quiet point about the dad. For most of the run of either show, the father is a selfish, foolish man who takes his family for granted. He ignores his wife. He embarrasses his kids. He chases his own dumb wants. So when each show kills him off and forces him to face what comes after, it strips all of that away and gets down to what the man actually values when everything else is gone. And both shows land on the same answer. When Peter is dead and pleading in that elevator, what he is fighting for is his family. When Stan is dead and standing at the door of his own personal paradise, what is waiting inside is his family and his home. The afterlife becomes a mirror that shows the dad and the audience that for all his selfishness, the thing he truly wants and the thing he truly treasures is the family he spends most of his life failing to appreciate. Both shows use the ultimate ending, death itself, to prove that point in almost the exact same way. It is also worth noticing how both shows handle the fact that, of course, the dad cannot really stay dead. These are ongoing shows. Peter has to be back next week. Stan has to be back next week. So both shows build the return right into the story, rather than just snapping him back with no explanation. Peter earns his way back through God's test and the bargain for a second chance. Stan earns his way back through the angel lawyer's argument in one episode, or through reaching the home-shaped heaven in the other. The shows treat the round trip as part of the tale. Death, the struggle on the other side, and the road home are all baked into the plot, instead of death being a cheap fake-out that gets undone in a second. Both shows respected the weight of killing the dad enough to give his return an actual shape. And think about how bold this is as a shared choice. Plenty of cartoons would never let their lead character truly die, even for an episode, even as a dream or a coma. It is a big, heavy swing that risks feeling too dark or too sad for a comedy. Yet both of these shows, made by the same creator under the same roof, decided to do it. Both decided the dad should die. Both decided to follow him into the afterlife rather than cut away. Both decided the story over there should be about clawing his way back to his family. That is a very particular thing for two shows to agree on, and they agreed on it completely. The small differences are just flavor on the same dish. Family Guy keeps it tighter and stranger, with a single elevator, a chat with God, and a one-day test back on Earth. American Dad goes huge and epic, with the literal end of the world, a war that lasts years, Jesus as a character, and a wasteland of ruin before the dad finally dies and finds his way to a home-shaped heaven. One is small and personal, the other is sweeping and grand, but both are the same story at the core. The dad dies. The dad faces what comes next. The dad fights to get back to the family he loves but rarely showed it. And the dad, in the end, finds his way home. So now the pattern has reached the absolute limit of what can happen to a person. These two shows have matched each other on a scrambled body, a ruined Christmas, a changed identity, a broken timeline, a hopeless crush, and now the end of life itself and the road back from it. There is nowhere bigger to go than death, and both shows went there, and both went there the same way, with the dad clawing toward home. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Up to now, every match has been a heavy one, a swing at something deep like death or love or who a person is. The next time these two shows lined up, the stakes dropped way down to something smaller and sillier, but the match was just as clean. Both shows took their bumbling dad and let him chase a dream he had no business chasing, the dream of becoming a real athlete, a star on the field, long past the age when any of that should have been possible. Section 7. The Dad Chases Sports Glue. glory. Both of these dads carry around a picture of themselves that does not match what they actually are. They are middle-aged, out of shape, and far past the point where any of this should be possible, and yet each one believes that somewhere inside him there is a champion waiting to come out. So it makes sense that both shows handed their dad the same dream. The dream of being a real athlete, a star, someone who steps onto the field or the ice and shows the world what he can do. Both shows let the dad chase that dream. Both shows let him taste a little success. And both shows made the very same thing the cause of his downfall, which is the dad's own giant, out-of-control need to win. The body swap and the killer Santa and the broken timeline were all huge, life-sized swings. This one is smaller and sillier, just a dad playing a sport, but the match underneath is just as clean. Start with Family Guy. The episode is called Patriot Games, and it aired on January 29th, 2006, as the 20th episode of the 4th season. The show even lined it up to come out a week before the big football championship game, so the whole thing is soaked in football from the start. It begins at Peter's high school reunion. Peter, feeling small around his old classmates, lies and pretends to be a big shot, a rich secret agent type, trying to impress everyone. The lie falls apart when he meets the famous real-life football player Tom Brady, who is also there, and Peter completely loses his cool around him. Peter gets drunk and has to make a desperate run for the bathroom, and on the way, he plows straight through the crowd, knocking over every single person between him and the toilet like they are nothing. It is pure dumb luck and pure dumb strength, but Tom Brady watches this happen and sees something in it. He sees a man who can shove through anyone in his way, so Brady offers Peter a spot on the New England Patriots, a real professional football team, as a player. And just like that, Peter is living the dream. The fat, foolish dad is a professional athlete. He plays in real games. He scores. The whole family is riding high on it. For a little while, Peter is exactly the champion he always imagined himself to be. But this is where the trouble starts. And the trouble comes from inside Peter himself. His success goes straight to his head. Every time he does something good in a game, he has to show off about it. He cannot just score and move on. He has to make a huge deal out of it, soaking up all the attention. It boils over in one game where, after scoring, Peter stops everything to lead the entire packed stadium in a giant, fully staged musical number, complete with dancing, while the actual game waits on him. His showing off has gotten so out of hand that it has stopped being about the team and started being all about Peter. That is the last straw. The Patriots cut him from the team. His big mouth and his bigger ego cost him the dream job he stumbled into. The only team that will take him after that is a hopeless one in London, a group called the Silly Nannies who do not even seem to understand how the sport works. Peter, still hungry to prove himself, decides he is going to whip this sad team into shape and use them to get revenge on the Patriots. He challenges his old team to a game. He tries to toughen up his new players, even giving them something to make them more aggressive, but it does nothing. And the most fight he can get out of them is a gentle pillow fight in their pajamas. When the big game finally comes, the moment the Patriots charge at them, Peter's whole team panics and runs away, leaving Peter standing on the field completely alone against the team that cut him. He tries to play anyway. He gets flattened instantly. But Tom Brady, watching this, actually respects Peter for having the nerve to stand there and face them all by himself, and Peter wins back a little of Brady's regard before heading home with his family. So the shape of the Family Guy story is clear. The dad falls into a sports dream by accident, becomes a real athlete, and then his own ego and his hunger to be the center of attention ruin the whole thing and get him thrown off the team. His drive is what lifts him up, and his drive is what knocks him down. Now look at American Dad. The episode is called Of Ice and Men, and it aired on November 26, 2006. The sport here is not football. It is figure skating, the kind with the spins and the jumps and the fancy outfits on the ice. But the bones of the story are the same as Peter's, and they bend in the same place. The episode is framed in a strange and funny way. It opens far in the future, in the year 2045, where the goldfish Klaus has somehow been turned back into a human and is now an old man telling a bedtime story to his grandson. The story he tells is the whole episode, a look back at something that happened to the Smith family years before. And the story is this. Every single winter, the dad, Stan, goes cold and quiet and distant. He sneaks off by himself for whole days and nights and will not say where he goes. His wife Francine, hurt and lonely and worried, finally decides to follow him. She tracks him through a hidden passage in their own bathroom, one guarded by traps and even a knight, and follows it all the way out to a frozen pond. What she finds stops her cold. Stan, her gun-loving, manly, tough guy husband, is out there alone on the ice, figure skating beautifully, like someone who has done it his whole life. This is his secret. Long before he met Francine, Stan was a serious competitive figure skater. And here is the dark thing underneath it, the part that explains why he hides it. Stan tells the story of his past. He once skated in a regional competition with a partner. During their routine, his partner got hurt and went down. But Stan wanted to win so badly, his need to win was so enormous, that he kept right on skating through her injury instead of stopping to help her. And after the the routine, rather than rushing his injured partner to a hospital, he drove her across the country to argue about their low score. His partner never skated again. Stan has carried the guilt of that ever since, and he believes his hunger to win makes him a kind of monster, so he has skated alone every winter as a quiet punishment. Francine does not run from this. She decides to support him. She offers to be his new skating partner, to share the thing he loves instead of letting him suffer with it alone. And here is where the American Dad story lands, in the exact same spot the Family Guy one did. Francine enters the two of them into a real competition. At first, it is sweet, a husband and wife skating together. But the second there is a contest to win, Stan's old monster comes roaring back. His need to win takes over everything. He becomes harsh and obsessed. And then he does the cold thing. He dumps his own wife as his skating partner, casting Francine aside, because he finds a better skater to win with instead, the alien Roger, who turns out to be a fantastic skater. Stan trades away the partner who loves him for the partner who can get him the trophy. It takes a small, quiet moment at the competition to snap Stan out of it. He watches an old, clumsy couple skate a low-scoring routine, two people who clearly are not going to win anything, and yet they are happy, smiling, enjoying being on the ice together. Seeing that, Stan finally understands that the winning was never the point and that he should be skating with Francine. He rushes home to get her. His way of fixing things is messy and very Stan, since he ends up drugging Francine and bringing her to the rink unconscious, skating the first part of the routine with her limp in his arms before she comes around. But the meaning lands. Stan chooses his wife over the win, the very thing he failed to do all those years ago with his old partner. The story closes the loop on his guilt by having him finally put a person ahead of a trophy. Now set the two episodes side by side, and the match is easy to see once you look past the fact that one is football and the other is figure skating. In both, the loud, out-of-shape dad turns out to have a real athletic ability that surprises everyone. Peter can bulldoze through any defense. Stan can skate like a pro. In both, that ability pulls the dad into a real competition, with a real shot at glory. Peter joins an actual professional team. Stan enters a real skating contest. And in both, the dad gets to live his sports dream for a stretch of the episode, feeling like the champion he always pictured. Then comes the part that truly ties them together. In both episodes, the thing that wrecks everything is the dad's own monstrous need to win. Peter's ego makes him show off so badly that his team throws him out. Stan's hunger to win makes him so cruel that he dumps his own wife as his partner, the same kind of coldness that once cost him a partner who got hurt. Both shows take the dad's competitive fire, the very thing that made him good, and turn it into the flaw that blows up his dream and hurts the people around him. The sport is just the costume. Underneath, both stories are about a dad whose desire to win is so big that it becomes the worst thing about him. There is even a shared softness in how both episodes end. Neither one lets the dad actually win the big prize, and neither one needs to, because the real lesson is about something other than winning. Peter loses his game badly and gets flattened, but he earns back a bit of respect by standing his ground, and he goes home to his family. Stan loses too, since Roger ends up taking the trophy, but Stan finds something better by choosing to skate with the wife he loves instead of chasing the win. Both shows use the sports dream to teach the same quiet thing. The trophy is not what matters. The people you share the ice or the field with are what matter. The dad chases glory, lets his ego ruin it, and then learns that the glory was never the point. It is worth sitting with how both shows reach for the exact same kind of joke at the dad's expense. The whole gag in both is the gap between how the dad sees himself and what he really is. Peter struts around like a football superstar when he is really just a fat man who got lucky once in a bathroom doorway. Stan treats figure skating like a deadly serious quest for greatness, carrying decades of guilt over a sport that involves sparkly outfits and spinning on ice. Both shows mine a lot of comedy out of a regular, washed-up dad taking his athletic dream far more seriously than anyone else ever could. And both shows let that seriousness curdle into the dad treating his own teammates or partner like they do not matter next to the win. There is also a matching idea about how these dads are happiest when they finally let the dream go. As long as Peter is chasing stardom, he is a showboating jerk who alienates his team. The moment he stops trying to be a star and simply stands his ground for his own sake, he gets his bit of dignity back. As long as Stan is chasing the trophy, he is a monster who hurts the people closest to him. The moment he gives up the win and chooses his wife, he becomes a decent man again and closes the wound he has carried for 20 years. Both shows quietly say the same thing, that the dad's dream of glory was actually poisoning him, and that he only becomes good again when he sets the dream down and reaches for the people he loves instead. The differences between the two are just flavor, the same way they have been in every other match. One dad plays a rough, loud, crashing sport in front of huge crowds. The other dad does a graceful, quiet, hidden one out on a frozen pond. One story is a straight-ahead climb up and fall down. The other is wrapped inside a weird future bedtime story told by a fish turned human. But strip all that away, and you are looking at the same heart twice. A bumbling dad with a secret champion inside him. A real shot at sports glory. An ego too big to handle it. A dream dream that falls apart because the dad cares more about winning than about the people beside him. And a soft landing where the dad finally learns that the people matter more than the prize. So now the list has stretched across just about everything a dad can go through. A scrambled body, a ruined holiday, a changed identity, a broken timeline, a hopeless crush, though that one belonged to the pet, death itself, and the road back from it. And now a dream of glory chased too hard and lost. Through all of it, the two shows keep landing on the same beats, dressing them in different clothes, telling the same stories twice. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. Up to now, almost every match has put the dad, or the pet, in the loser's seat by the end. He gets thrown off the team, he gets shoved back into a fishbowl, he gets flattened on the field. The next time these two shows lined up, they flipped that completely. They took the strangest, most dangerous little member of each household, the baby genius on one show, and the scheming pet on the other, and they let that character actually win. Not a game, not a trophy. They let them seize control of an entire town, an entire world, and bend everyone in it to their will, until the mom of the house was the only one left standing to stop them. Section 8. The family schemer takes over everything. Every one of these shows has one member of the household who is just a little bit dangerous. Not the dad. The dad is loud and dumb and mostly harmless. The danger is the small, clever one who sits off to the side, watching everyone, thinking thoughts no one else in the house is thinking. On Family Guy, that is Stewie, the baby, who talks like a grown genius and has spent the whole show cooking up plans that range from silly to truly evil. On American Dad, that is Klaus, the goldfish with a man's mind, the family punching bag who everyone ignores and pushes around. For most of both shows, these two are kept on a leash. They scheme, they fail, they get knocked back down. But each show has an episode where the leash comes off completely. Each show lets its dangerous little schemer actually win. Not a game or a prize, but real power over everyone around them. And in both, the only person left who can stop them is the mom of the house. Start with Family Guy. The story comes in a two-part episode, and the part that matters here is called Lois Kills Stewie, which aired on November 11th, 2007, as part of the 6th season. It is the back half of a bigger story that started the week before. To understand it, you need the setup from the first part. In that earlier half, Stewie finally does the thing he has threatened to do for the entire run of the show. He shoots his mother Lois off the side of a cruise ship and believes he has killed her. For a while, it seems like he got away with it. Lois is gone, presumed dead, and Stewie is free. Then Lois comes back. She survived the shooting, washed up, lost her memory for a while, and after a long, strange road, she finally remembers everything and returns home. The second she is back, she points the finger straight at Stewie and tells everyone the baby tried to murder her. And this is where Stewie stops hiding. With his secret out, he drops the act entirely and shows the family exactly who he really is. He pulls a gun on his own family inside their home. When the neighbor Cleveland happens to wander in, Stewie shoots him dead right in front of everyone. He ties his family to chairs. Then he forces the dog Brian to drive him where he needs to go to finish his real plan. That plan is bigger than revenge on his mom. Stewie wants to rule the world, and he has the brains to actually do it. He gets himself into the heart of a powerful government building, breaks into a giant supercomputer, and seizes control of the entire planet's power grid, the thing that gives the whole world its electricity. With his hand on that switch, Stewie holds the world by the throat. He threatens to plunge everyone back into darkness, to drag all of humanity back to a time before lights and machines, unless the world does exactly what he says, and the world has no choice. They give in. Stewie, a baby, becomes the president of the world. He sets up his base in the most powerful house in the country, has his official portrait painted, and starts barking out his own ridiculous laws for everyone on Earth to follow. The smallest, strangest member of the Griffin family is now in charge of all of it. There is one person who refuses to bend, and it is his mother. Lois has had enough. She understands that no one else is going to stop him, that the police and the world have already surrendered, and that the job falls to her. She arms herself with weapons taken from Stewie's own secret stash, and after calmly telling her husband Peter about dinner being in the oven, she sets out to take her son down herself. She crashes through the window of Stewie's grand office, and the two of them go to war. Mother and baby, fighting each other with guns and knives and bare hands in a long, brutal battle, while Stewie's whole reign hangs on the outcome. The mom is the last line of defense against the family schemer who took over the world. Now look at American Dad. The episode is called Beyond the Alcove, and it aired on March 7th, 2022. The schemer here is Klaus, the goldfish, and his takeover starts from a much smaller, sadder place than Stewie's. Klaus is the member of the Smith family that everyone treats as a joke. He is lonely. He is starved for any kind of love or attention. The whole episode kicks off with him and the mom, Francine, both wanting to be the center of attention at her own dinner party, and Klaus, a fish, somehow charming the guests better than she can. Francine cannot figure out how a fish is suddenly so popular and well-liked, so she digs into it, and what she uncovers is far darker darker than simple charm. Klaus has been secretly hypnotizing people. He has learned how to study a person, figure out exactly what makes them happy, and then quietly train their mind to like him, the way you might train a pet, until they cannot help loving him. He has been doing this person by person, slowly building a base of people under his control. When Francine confronts him about it in a hidden room he has set up, Klaus does not back down. He reveals the full scale of his plan, and then he hypnotizes Francine too, putting her under his control just like the others. Then the show jumps ahead 2 months, and the scale of what Klaus has done becomes clear. Francine wakes up far away from home, having been smuggled out of town by the alien Roger, who reveals the awful truth. While Francine was under, Klaus did not stop at a few party guests. He hypnotized the entire town of Langley Falls. Every single person now loves Klaus and obeys Klaus. He has remade the whole town in his own image, with his face and his orders plastered everywhere, demanding that everyone love him and bow to him. The little ignored fish that the family used as a punching bag is now the unquestioned ruler of the entire town, a full-blown dictator with a city of hypnotized followers who will do anything he says. And just like on Family Guy, there is one person who is not under the schemer's spell and who has to be the one to stop him. It is the mom. Francine, somehow free of the hypnosis after being taken away, is the lone holdout. Everyone else, including her own husband Stan and her own children, has fallen under Klaus's control and now adores him. So Francine has to fight her way back into the town and find a way to break his hold over everyone, even as the whole hypnotized population, her own family included, turns against her and tries to stop her. She eventually figures out how to snap people out of it and free the town from the fish who conquered it. The mom, standing alone against a town that worships the family schemer, is the only thing that can bring him down. Now set these 2 episodes side by side, and the match is striking. In both, the smallest and strangest member of the family, the one everyone underestimates, breaks free of their usual place and seizes real power over everyone around them. Stewie, a baby treated as a baby, takes control of the whole world. Klaus, a goldfish treated as a joke, takes control of the whole town. In both, the schemer does not just grab a little bit of power. They go all the way to the top, becoming a ruler, a dictator, with everyone forced to obey. Stewie becomes president of the world and writes his own laws. Klaus becomes the master of Langley Falls and remakes it around himself. In both, the takeover grows out of exactly who that character has always been. Stewie has spent the entire show as a tiny would-be evil genius with dreams of ruling everything, so when he finally pulls it off, it is the natural end of years of scheming. Klaus has spent the entire show as the lonely, ignored, love-starved member of the family, so when he finally seizes power, it comes from that aching need to be loved, twisted into making everyone love him by force. The shows did not pick these takeovers at random. Each one fits the character like a key in a lock, and then comes the piece that ties them together most tightly. In both shows, the one person left to stop the schemer is the mom, not the dad. Peter is tied to a chair, useless. Stan is hypnotized, useless. The husbands are out of the picture in both. It falls to Lois on one show and to Francine on the other to be the lone hero, the last free mind, the one who has to march in and take down the family member who took over everything. Both shows hand the final battle to the mother, the warm center of the family, and turn her into the only thing standing between the schemer and total control. Lois physically fights Stewie in his seat of power. Francine fights her way through a town of brainwashed people, her own family among them, to break Klaus's grip. Same role, same hero. The mom against the monster the family made. There is even a matching idea buried under both about how these schemers are creations of the very family that ignores them. Stewie's evil has always been waved off by the Griffins, who never take his threats seriously, never believe a baby could really be dangerous, right up until he proves them all wrong. Klaus's takeover springs directly from years of the Smiths treating him as worthless, ignoring him, pushing him around, until that ignored creature finally grabs the only thing he was never given, which is everyone's attention and love, and takes it by force. Both shows quietly suggest that the family helped build the very monster that turns on them, by never seeing the danger sitting right there in the crib or the fishbowl the whole time. It is worth noticing how both episodes use the takeover to flip the normal order of the house upside down. Day to day, Stewie is at the bottom, a baby with no real power, dependent on the people around him. Klaus is at the very bottom too, a fish in a bowl who cannot even leave the room on his own. The whole joke of both characters is how little control they actually have over their own lives. So there is real punch in watching the show take the most powerless member of the family and, for one episode, make them the most powerful person in the entire world or town. Both shows reach for that same upside-down thrill, the bottom rung suddenly sitting on the throne, the ignored one suddenly holding all the cards. Both shows also lean on the same kind of dark comedy to pull it off. Stewie's reign is played for laughs even as it is genuinely sinister, with a murderous baby calmly painting his official portrait and passing silly laws while holding the world hostage. Klaus's reign is played the same way, a goofy fish demanding worship and plastering his face everywhere while having quietly enslaved an entire town's minds. Both shows want you to laugh at how ridiculous it is that this tiny creature is in charge, while also feeling the creep of just how far they were willing to go. The humor and the menace sit right on top of each other in both, which is a very particular tone to land, and both shows land it the same way. The differences, once again, are just the wrapping. Stewie grabs power through force and fear, with guns and a stolen grip on the world's electricity, a loud and violent path to the top. Klaus grabs power through quiet manipulation, slowly bending minds one at a time until a whole town belongs to him. A sneaky and creeping path. One takeover is a hostile invasion, the other is a slow poison. One schemer rules the entire planet, the other rules a single town. But strip the wrapping away and the gift inside is identical. The underestimated little member of the family rises up, seizes total control over everyone, becomes a ruler the whole population must obey, and is finally brought down by the mom, the one person whose mind and will the schemer could not break. There is something almost fitting about both shows saving this story for their strangest characters. The dad gets the body swaps and the sports dreams and the trips through time, the big loud adventures. But the takeover of everything, the seizing of true power, goes to the quiet, dangerous one in the corner. The shows seem to understand that Peter and Stan, for all their noise, are not actually built to rule anything. The real threat in each house was always the small, clever creature being ignored, the baby plotting in his crib or the fish plotting in his bowl. And both shows, on their own, came to that same conclusion and built nearly the same episode around it, right down to handing the rescue to the mother. So the pattern holds yet again, this time at the very top of the power ladder. The schemer takes the throne. The family that ignored him pays the price. The mom rides in to save the day. 2 shows, 1 story, the throne and the rebellion told twice. That makes 8 times now that these 2 shows reached into the same drawer and pulled out the same idea: a scrambled body, a monstrous Santa, a gay storyline for the macho dad, a trip to the past that broke the present, a pet in love with the wife, a death and the journey home, a dream of sports glory chased too far, and now a tiny schemer seizing control of the whole world. 8 matches, all from the same creator, the same teams, the same building, each one dressed a little differently, but built on the same bones underneath. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. The next time these 2 shows lined up, they did not bother to hide the borrowing inside the plot. They put it right on the surface, in the very shape of the episode itself. Both shows took a famous, beloved movie that everyone in the audience already knew by heart, and instead of telling their own story for a week, they spent the entire runtime acting that movie out with their own characters, turning the dad and the family and the schemer into the heroes and villains of someone else's blockbuster. Section 9. The famous movie made over. Up to now, every match on this list has lived inside the plot. 2 body swaps, 2 evil Santas, 2 trips through time. The borrowing was always buried in the story itself, where you had to look for it. This one is different, because both shows stopped hiding the borrowing and put it right out in the open, in the very shape of the episode. Each show picked a famous, beloved movie that the whole audience already knew by heart, and instead of telling its own story for a week, it handed the entire runtime over to that movie. It took its own characters and dropped them into the roles of someone else's blockbuster, and spent the whole episode acting it out. Both shows reached for the exact same trick, and both of them cast that trick the same way. Start with Family Guy. The episode is called Blue Harvest, and it aired on September 23, 2007, as the big premiere of the show's 6th season. It was a special, longer episode, and it was a huge swing for the show. The famous movie it took over was the original Star Wars, the 1977 film, the one that started the whole space saga. The way it sets this up is simple and clever. The power goes out at the Griffin house, leaving the family sitting in the dark with nothing to do. To pass the time during the blackout, Peter decides to tell his family the story of Star Wars. And as he tells it, the whole episode becomes that story, with the people from Peter's life playing all the parts. From that point on, the episode is the plot of Star Wars from beginning to end, acted out by the cast of Family Guy. The casting is where it gets fun, and where the real pattern starts to show. Peter plays Han Solo, the cocky smuggler hero. Peter's son Chris plays Luke Skywalker, the young hero at the center of the whole thing. Peter's wife Lois plays Princess Leia, the leading lady. The dog Brian plays Chewbacca, the loyal furry sidekick. And the baby, Stewie, the family's resident little villain, plays Darth Vader, the most famous bad guy in movie history. The rest of the roles get filled out by other people from the show, with the neighbor Quagmire as the worried robot C-3PO, the neighbor Cleveland as the beeping robot R2-D2, the creepy old man Herbert as the wise mentor Obi-Wan Kenobi, and the mayor playing the cold Empire commander. The whole town gets slotted into the movie, and the story plays out just like the real film. The droids escape with secret plans. Luke meets Obi-Wan, they hire Han and Chewie to fly them across the galaxy, they rescue the princess from the giant space station, and in the end they blow that station up and win the day. It is the actual Star Wars, start to finish, simply wearing Family Guy costumes. This was not a small or sloppy thing the show threw together. Family Guy got real permission permission from the company that owns Star Wars to do this, and that company gave them one rule, which was that the characters had to look exactly like they do in the movies. So the show went all in, matching the real look, the real music, the real sound. It worked so well that it became the first of 3 Star Wars episodes the show would make, turning the original movie trilogy into a whole Family Guy trilogy. And here is a small detail that ties this whole topic together in a neat little knot. Hidden in the background of one scene, in the famous space bar full of aliens, you can spot Roger, the alien from American Dad, making a quiet cameo. The 2 shows are linked right there inside the parody itself. Now look at American Dad. The episode is called Tearjerker, and it aired on January 13th, 2008, just a few months after Blue Harvest. The famous movie it took over was not Star Wars. It was James Bond, the long-running series about the smooth, deadly secret agent who saves the world and beats a fancy villain. And just like Blue Harvest, the entire episode becomes that kind of movie, with the American Dad cast dropped into all the roles. The casting follows the very same logic Family Guy used, which is the striking part. The dad, Stan, who is already a spy on the regular show, plays the hero agent at the center of it all, the James Bond stand-in. His wife Francine plays the glamorous leading lady at his side, the classic Bond girl type, given a silly punny name like all those movie characters get. The family's strangest, most dangerous member, the alien Roger, plays the villain, a rich and twisted mastermind named Tearjerker. The goldfish Klaus plays one of the villain's henchmen. The son Steve plays the gadget maker who hands the hero his spy tools. The boss at the spy agency plays the role of the hero's commander. Everyone in the family gets a spot in the spy movie. The plot is a full, proper spy adventure. Tearjerker, the villain, is a wealthy madman who has been kidnapping famous movie stars and swapping them out for robot copies. His grand evil plan is to release the saddest movie ever made, a film so unbearably depressing that everyone who watches it will cry themselves to death. Stan, as the hero agent, has to chase him down and stop the plan before the whole world weeps itself into the grave. The episode hits all the famous beats of a spy film. There is the gun barrel opening that every Bond movie starts with. There is a chase in the snow. There is a tense game at a fancy casino. There is a secret hideout built inside a volcano. And there is the villain falling into that volcano at the end, with one hand rising up out of the lava before sinking back down. The exact kind of ending those movies love. Like the Family Guy one, this episode worked so well that the villain Tearjerker came back for a follow-up adventure later on. Now, set these 2 episodes side by side. On the surface, they look different, because one is acting out a space movie and the other is acting out a spy movie. The borrowed films are not the same, but step back from which movie each one chose, and the real match is impossible to miss. Both shows decided to do the same thing, which is to take a whole episode and hand it over to a famous movie, recasting their own characters as that movie's heroes and villains, and acting the whole thing out from start to finish. That is a very specific kind of episode to make, and both shows made it within a few months of each other. The matching goes deeper than just the idea, all the way down to who plays what. Look at the casting logic, because it lines up almost perfectly. In both shows, the dad gets a starring hero role. Peter is Han Solo. Stan is the Bond agent. In both shows, the wife plays the leading lady at the hero's side. Lois is Princess Leia. Francine is the Bond girl. And here is the big one. In both shows, the role of the famous villain goes to the family's resident menace, the strange and dangerous little troublemaker. On Family Guy, that is Stewie, the evil baby, who becomes Darth Vader. On American Dad, that is Roger, the scheming alien, who becomes the mastermind Tearjerker. Both shows looked at their own cast, asked who should play the bad guy, and pointed at the exact same kind of character, the one who was already a little bit evil to begin with. The pet and the supporting players fill out the smaller roles on both. The whole family gets sorted into the movie the same way. There is a clear reason both shows kept landing in the same place, and it comes back to the man behind both of them. The creator of both shows is a huge movie fan, the kind of person who loves these famous films deeply and knows them inside and out. So when he had 2 shows running at the same time, both itching to do a big special episode, both reached for the same instinct, which was to take a movie he adored and lovingly rebuild it with his own characters. One show grabbed the space epic he grew up on, the other grabbed the spy series everyone knows, but the urge behind both was identical. The urge to play inside a beloved movie for a whole episode. Both episodes also share the same kind of pride in the craft. These were not lazy cash grabs. Family Guy chased down real permission and matched the real look and sound of Star Wars so carefully that it felt like the genuine article with jokes layered on top. American Dad built its spy world out of all the little pieces fans would recognize. The gun barrel, the casino, the volcano lair, every famous Bond touch in place. Both shows treated the movie they were borrowing with real care, clearly wanting to honor it even while poking fun at it. And both shows were rewarded for it, because both of these parody episodes were popular enough to get follow-ups, a whole trilogy on one side and a returning villain on the other. The differences, as always, are just just the wrapping. One episode is set in outer space with lasers and robots and a dark lord in a black mask. The other is set in casinos and island hideouts with tuxedos and gadgets and a villain in a monocle. One borrows a story about rebels fighting an evil empire. The other borrows a story about a lone agent stopping a madman. But underneath those very different coats of paint, the move is the same. Hand the whole episode to a famous movie. Recast the family into it. Make the dad a hero. Make the menace the villain. Make the wife the leading lady. Act it out with love and jokes from beginning to end. Two shows, one trick, pulled within months of each other. What makes this match special is that it is the most honest borrowing on the whole list. The other matches were quiet, the kind of thing you only notice when you set the episodes next to each other. This one is loud and proud. Both shows openly built an entire episode around someone else's movie, and both built it the same way, with the same casting logic from the same film-loving mind. It is the clearest proof yet that these two shows were never really separate at all. They were two hands of the same person, reaching into the same box of ideas, again and again. That makes 9 times now that these shows pulled the same idea out of the same drawer. A scrambled body, a monstrous Santa, a gay storyline, a broken timeline, a lovesick pet, a death and the road home, a dream of sports glory, a schemer seizing power, and now a whole episode handed over to a famous movie. 9 matches, all from the same source, each one a little more revealing than the last. Before we move on, if you're enjoying this analysis, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel tremendously. There is one match left, and it might be the biggest in pure size. The earlier stories kept the family mostly on the ground, here on Earth, even when things got strange. The last time these two shows lined up, they took a member of the family and flung them clear off the planet, shooting them up into the cold, black emptiness of outer space, leaving everyone back home in a panic, scrambling to find a way to bring their lost one back down to Earth before it was too late. Section 10. Flung into outer space. Every match on this list so far has kept the family on the ground. Even the wildest ones, the body swaps and the killer Santas and the trips through time, all played out here on Earth, or at least close to it. For the very last match, both shows let go of the ground completely. Each one took a member of the family and flung them clear off the planet, up into the cold, black emptiness of outer space, far from home, far from everyone they love. And in both, the whole heart of the episode became the same desperate question: how does the lost one get back down to Earth? The space episode is the biggest swing on the list in pure size, because the stakes are no longer a marriage or a holiday or a job. The stakes are the entire planet, shrinking to a tiny dot somewhere in the dark. Start with Family Guy. The episode is called Space Cadet, and it aired on January 6, 2013, as the 9th episode of the 11th season. It begins with something sad and small. Chris, the older son, is doing badly in school, and his parents are worried and embarrassed about his future. While they are talking about how slow he is, Chris overhears them, and it crushes him. He feels stupid and unloved. To make it up to him and lift his spirits, his parents let him pick any camp he wants to go to. Wanting to prove he is not dumb, Chris picks a space camp at a real space center, the kind of place where kids learn how rockets and shuttles work. Once he gets there, Chris struggles. The space camp turns out to be much harder than he expected, and he cannot keep up with the other kids. After a few days, feeling defeated, he calls his parents and begs them to come pick him up and take him home. The family drives down to get him, and here is where everything goes wrong. While they are there, Chris proudly gives his family a tour inside a real space shuttle, showing off the little bit he did manage to learn. The baby, Stewie, spots the launch button, gets curious, and presses it. The shuttle fires off, blasting the entire Griffin family up into outer space by accident. One push of a button, and the whole family is gone, stranded in orbit high above the Earth with no easy way down. Now they are stuck. They float up there in a panic, with the people back on the ground watching helplessly, and word spreading about whether the family will ever make it home alive. The family finds a radio that connects them to the ground crew, who might be able to talk them down, but the signal cuts out, and then Peter destroys the radio entirely while clumsily trying to fix it. Their last lifeline is gone. There is no one left to save them. The only hope is to land the shuttle themselves, and not one of them knows how. This is where the sad little setup from the start pays off. Chris, the boy everyone called stupid, the one who felt too dumb to matter, is the only person on board who learned anything about space travel. He may have struggled at the camp, but he picked up enough. He takes the controls and uses what he learned to slow the shuttle down for landing. It spins out of control at first, terrifying everyone, but Chris fights it and manages to steady the ship, getting it stable enough for the automatic landing to kick in. The shuttle comes down safely. The crowd on the ground cheers. Chris, the boy who was called an idiot, is the hero who brought his whole family home from space. The thing his family mocked him for ends up being the thing that saves all their lives. Now look at American Dad. The episode is called Lost in Space, and it aired on May 5th, 2013, just a few months after Space Cadet. The show treated it as a big milestone episode, and it is one of the most unusual episodes the show ever made, because it leaves the family almost entirely behind to follow one person lost in the stars. That person is Jeff, the kind, dim, sweet husband of the daughter Haley. Here is how Jeff got there. Jeff had been abducted by aliens and carried off into space on a giant ship that belongs to the alien race of Roger, the family pet alien. The cruel twist is that Jeff was taken in Roger's place. Roger dodged his own capture and let Jeff get hauled away instead. So now Jeff, an ordinary human, is stranded millions of miles from Earth, trapped on a massive spaceship that works like a giant shopping mall run on slave labor, ruled by a tyrant named Emperor Zing. Jeff has been stuck up there for months, doing forced work, surrounded by aliens, with no clear way home, and a wife he aches to get back to. Jeff learns there is only one way to earn his freedom and his trip home. He has to prove to Emperor Zing that he truly, deeply loves his wife Haley. The test is brutal. A strange creature pulls up Jeff's memories of his marriage and shows them on big screens for everyone to judge. The catch is that the whole thing is rigged. The creature has been ordered to show only the bad memories, only the moments where Jeff was selfish or thoughtless to Haley. So the test makes it look like Jeff does not love her at all, and the Emperor declares that he failed. The price of failing is having his manhood cut away and stuck in a fishbowl. But Jeff's love is real, and the episode keeps proving it. At his lowest point, a shape-shifting alien transforms into a perfect copy of Haley and offers Jeff one last night together before he loses everything. Jeff, even broken and doomed, cannot do it. He will not cheat on the real Haley, not even with a perfect fake. That refusal shows the truth the rigged test tried to hide. Jeff digs deeper and discovers why the Emperor rigged it. The Emperor's own heart was shattered long ago by a lover who cheated on him, and that lover was Roger. The pain of that betrayal is why Zing tricks everyone into believing love is not real. Jeff exposes the whole scheme, sparks the enslaved aliens to rise up in revolt, and uses the chaos to escape in a small pod, helped by a fellow human captive who sacrifices himself so Jeff can get away. And then comes the bittersweet ending. Jeff is finally free and headed home, but he learns there are over 47,000 planets named Earth scattered across space, so finding his way back to his Earth and his Haley is going to be a very long journey. Meanwhile, the whole time, back home on Earth, Haley has been grieving, sinking into depression over her lost husband while the family fumbles around trying to comfort her. Now set these two episodes side by side. On the surface, they reach space in different ways. The Griffin family gets there by accident, a baby pressing a launch button, and the whole family is together up there. Jeff gets there by alien abduction, taken in Roger's place, and he is all alone in the stars. One is a goofy mishap, the other is a cruel kidnapping, but strip that away and the core is the same on both. A member of the family is flung off the planet and stranded in the cold emptiness of outer space, cut off from home, with the entire heart of the episode being the fight to get back down to Earth. The matching pieces stack up from there. In both, the lost one is a character the family tends to overlook or look down on. On Family Guy, it is Chris, the son everyone calls stupid. On American Dad, it is Jeff, the dim, sweet son-in-law no one takes very seriously. Both shows took one of their least respected characters and put the whole weight of a space adventure on his shoulders, and both shows used that adventure to let that overlooked character prove his worth. Chris proves he is not stupid by landing the shuttle and saving his family. Jeff proves his love is real and his heart is good by refusing to give up on Haley even when it would have saved him pain. The space trip becomes a test that the underestimated one finally passes. In both, there is real fear and real stakes about getting home. The Griffins lose their radio and their link to the ground, leaving them with no help and a planet far below them. Jeff loses everything, his freedom and nearly his body, stranded months from anyone who loves him. And both shows lean into the same big, dark feeling underneath the jokes. The loneliness of being lost in space, the ache of looking at that distant Earth and wondering if you will ever stand on it again. Both shows let that ache sit there, real, even while the gags keep flying. There is even a matching feeling back on the ground in both. On Family Guy, the people at the Space Center and the watching world are in a panic over the family's fate, unsure if they will survive. On American Dad, the family back home is sunk in grief, with Haley falling apart over her missing husband, while the others try and fail to fill the hole he left. So both shows show you both ends of the same rope, the lost one fighting to get home up in space, and the people on Earth aching over the one they lost. The distance between those 2 points is the whole story in both. Both episodes also stand out as big departures from the normal shape of each show. These are not regular living room episodes. They are special, ambitious swings, the kind a show only does when it wants to stretch and try something huge. Family Guy built an entire space disaster around one overlooked kid. American Dad threw out almost its whole cast to follow one lonely man across the stars, barely showing the family at all. Both shows treated the trip to space as a chance to do something grander than usual, and both reached for it at nearly the same time. The 2 paragraphs are already strong on their own. The issue is the hard jump from a single space episode straight into the big closing verdict. Here's a smoothed handoff. I've adjusted the tail of the second to last paragraph and the open of the last so they connect. The differences are just the final coat of paint, the same as every other match. One trip ends fast and happy, with the family landing safely, and the overlooked son hailed as a hero within the same episode. The other ends slow and bittersweet, with the lost one finally free but facing a long, lonely road across thousands of planets before he can ever hope to come home. One is an accident fixed by knowledge. The other is a kidnapping survived by love. But underneath, both are the same story. Take a member of the family, fling him off the Earth into the emptiness of space, strand him far from everyone he loves, and make the whole episode about the desperate, frightening pull to get back home. And with that, the count reaches 10. 10 is a lot. It is far past the point where chance could explain it, where you could shrug and say two cartoons just happened to think alike on a few odd nights. And the answer has been sitting in plain sight the entire way down this list, in the same line that followed every single match. The same creator, the same teams, the same building. Seth MacFarlane built Family Guy and helped build American Dad, and he ran them side by side, out of one studio, with the same writers drifting between them. The people dreaming up Peter's next disaster were often the very same people dreaming up Stan's. So every strong idea had two homes instead of one. That is why the bodies swapped twice, why the Santas turned deadly twice, why the dad died twice, why the family got flung into space twice. Two shows that share a brain will keep telling the same stories, and these two did, 10 times over. Underneath the different houses and the different jokes, in the ways that matter most, they were always the same show.
If you enjoyed this video essay, make sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.